Good evening, viewers, and thanks indeed for joining us in this edition of the Primetime Newscast on Equinox Television. A student of the Yaoundé University in the central region of the country is nowhere to be found after producing a movie that criticizes longevity in power. And also in this newscast, the status of Francois Bozizé, the embattled president of the Central African Republic, remains preoccupying, with many legal minds here in the economic capital Douala saying that he is still a diplomatic figure. We get to talk about that in the second part of this newscast. And also, a fire incident reduces a greater section of a building at the Deido neighborhood here in the economic capital Douala into ashes. These are major headlines, details and more just in a moment. Good evening to you once again, viewers. We thank you so much for joining us in this edition of the Primetime Newscast on Equinox Television. We begin right away with the after effect of the ongoing crisis at the Central African Republic, where the circulation of heavy-duty trucks from Douala, Cameroon to Bangui in the Central African Republic has remained paralyzed following the overthrow of President Francois Bozizé by rebels. Since last Saturday, it is impossible for the said trucks leaving from Douala to cross the border town of Bangui through Bangui to the east region of the Central African Republic. And some of the truck drivers at Kangiasa here in the economic capital Douala said the trucks that leave Douala for Bangui ends only at the borders. And before now, over 50 trucks were plying the Douala-Bangui way or highway. That is on daily basis. We shall be coming back to that in a subsequent newscast. Now, the president of the Central African Republic has spent his first night at the Hilton Hotel that is in the capital city, Yaoundé, after he fled his country, leaving it in the hands of rebels. And whether a fugitive or not, Francois Bozizé remains and should be treated as a diplomatic figure. Those are the views of some legal minds here in the economic capital, Douala, as far as his presence here in Cameroon is concerned. Rani Belsatowara spoke to some legal minds and now tells us more in the following report.
In the wake of the recent coup d'etat in the Central African Republic that saw its president fleeing and taking refuge in Cameroon, questions are being raised as to his present status, especially being in another country. While some legal experts say he can be classified as a war or political fugitive in Cameroon, Barrister Joseph Claude Beliga says his status as a fugitive in Cameroon must be made official by the International High Commission of the UN.
He needs to go to what we call Haut Commissariat aux Réfugiés, National High Commissioner for Refugees, who had to recognize him as a refugee.
According to the barrister at law, he is on an indefinite transit period while making arrangements to move to a country that will officially receive him as a fugitive.
But now he's only on transit. He will choose the town for settlement, where he will settle, and there they ask for a statute of refugee.
Another legal mind still here in Douala said Francois Bozizé is in Cameroon because of the benevolence of its leader and also because it is a neighbor to the Central African Republic. The legal experts, however, raised concerns about the diplomatic constraints on Cameroon if the Central African Republic's president stays for long in the country. They advanced that whether a fugitive or not, Francois Bozizé remains and should be treated as a diplomatic figure. He fled his capital city Bangui on Sunday morning after rebels seized control of the country.
And that is what legal minds here in the economic capital Douala think as far as the presence of Francois Bozizé is concerned in Cameroon. And what do international organizations, what are they saying? And international organizations and world leaders have not remained silent to the recent coup d'etat that toppled the government of Francois Bozizé in favor of the Seleka rebels. And the Secretary General of La Francophonie has frowned at the harsh seizure of power and said the rebels have violated the rights of freedom of the Central Africans. And the United Nations, France, and also Chad have warned the purported new regime of a similar fate if the terms of the peace accord that was arrived at in Congo are not respected. And the AU had earlier suspended the Central African Republic from its official activities and warned that the rebels that they are going to face trial. And we shall be telling you more on that as well in our subsequent news, because now we take you to the capital city, Yaoundé of the country, where a student of the university in the central region of the country and a producer of a movie which condemns longevity in power has since Sunday been declared missing, and he was reportedly kidnapped by some yet to be identified individuals over the said film. Roland Akon in the following report tells us more.
This movie is said to be the motive behind the abduction of its producer, a Yaoundé University student whose names we got as Richard Fofoué Djimeli.
Le peuple tout entier meurt faute de médicaments et c'est notre signe. La construction de la République. Silence!
The movie is said to condemn longevity in power by some African leaders, what appears to be an embarrassment to some Yaoundé bigwigs.
De la ligne des Papandem.
Bomo Bomo Alain is one of the actors in the film. They convened this press briefing in Yaoundé Tuesday to denounce the abduction of Djimeli.
Le film en lui-même ne retrace rien, n'a pas de complot.
They dispelled as false allegations that the film aims to destabilize the regime in place. He says the movie even has an authorization from the Ministry of Culture.
Ce film a eu le visa du ministère de la Culture.
In the students' residential quartier, Bonamou Sadi, the room of Djimeli has been sealed by officers of the Yaoundé Judicial Police. His whereabouts is not still known since Sunday. The caretaker of the municipality told us that Djimeli was discovered missing Sunday morning.
Donc, comme il avait reçu des menaces de mort précédemment,
They only found his room ransacked with nothing taken away by his unidentified abductors.
That is the fate of a student and also a producer of a movie that condemns longevity in power that is in Cameroon. Now we remain in the central region of the country to say that inhabitants of the Nkobisong neighborhood have expressed anger at the prolonged intermittent power cuts in that part of the country. How have they been coping with the said situation, and also how much have the blackouts or the series of blackouts cost them? Roland Akon attempts an answer to those questions in this report.
The intermittent power failure in some parts of Nkobisong has led to the damage of household electronic appliances of many residents. This lady says her TV set has gone bad at least 3 times, causing her a lot of trouble.
On n'arrive pas à comprendre. Ça a même déjà gâté ma télé jusqu'à 3 fois.
Students are also hit by the intermittent power failure. This student tells us it affects his study program.
Il n'y avait pas le courant. Lui n'entend pas ça, nous met dehors.
At this carpentry workshop, this man tells us he is now in conflict with customers over failure to deliver services on time due to power failure.
Si vous me passez par exemple la commande d'un cercueil et que je ne peux pas vous livrer au délai parce que le courant s'est coupé, je suis entraîné peut-être dans les postes de gendarmerie et de commissariat pour malhonnêteté alors que je ne suis pas malhonnête.
The problem is attributed to a technical problem, and we did not succeed in our attempts to reach management of the Electricity Corporation to react. Residents are pleading on the corporation to find a solution to the problem.
Ça ne vaut pas la peine.
And here in the economic capital, Douala, Chinese traders in Cameroon continue to ground their tools and complain that they do not feel protected in Cameroon. Some traders here in the economic capital, Douala, like I earlier said, have said the closure of the Chinese shops would increase their rates of turnover, and also while others are also wondering where they are going to get their stocks subsequently. Ranibel Satowara spoke to some of these traders in markets here in the economic capital, Douala. Now put together the following report.
The doors of almost all Chinese shops and restaurants have remained shut since they took to streets in some major towns in the country to denounce insecurity, a situation which has sparked off diverse reactions from Cameroonian traders. At the douche area here in Douala, some of the traders there expressed delight that they now have more customers after the Chinese closed their doors. They said the Chinese traders had monopolized especially wholesale businesses.
We don't have any effect because the Chinese people came here to come and sell for. They came here to sell for a wholesale price, but now they are not selling for the wholesale price.
Others, on the other hand, regretted that they would get stocked when their present stock runs out, as their main and reliable suppliers remain the Chinese.
We find it difficult to sell goods, things like because we depend on them. They are the only people that can import and sell it to us.
Some employees of the expatriates called on the Cameroonian authorities to look into their worries so they could regain their activities. The Chinese traders are denouncing the increasing rate of insecurity, burglary, assault, and alleged killing of some of their compatriots. They hope to continue sealing their doors for 7 days while waiting on the Cameroonian government to look into their situation.
Another fire incident here in Douala, precisely at the Dedu neighborhood, records enormous material damage. And as Annabella tells us in the following report, the exact cause of the incident is yet to be established.
This woman cries and laments over frustration which has just begun in her life. Her house has just been razed in a fire incident which broke out here at Bonatoki in Dedu. This other victim explains that she was at her workplace when she was informed by her landlady that her room was on fire.
Moi, je ne sais pas réellement ce qui s'est passé. Moi, je me lève le matin à 9 h pour mon travail. C'est après que la bailleuresse m'appelle pour me faire comprendre qu'il y a l'incendie et que le feu vient de ma maison.
The actual cause of the flames is still not known, but rumors have it that the house was ignited by some unknown persons.
J'attends seulement chacun dit de son côté, les locataires viennent brûler la maison. Moi, je ne sais pas si un locataire ferme sa maison, part au travail, chercher l'argent pour permettre à payer la maison et l'incendie arrive. Je pense même que c'est qui a lui à faire, c'est d'appeler.
Just opposite the house on fire, 2 persons incurred injuries after this coaster bus bumped into their house. The bus was reportedly on high speed and the driver seemingly tipsy before the incident.
Now, members of the National Medical Council have denounced the absence of didactic materials in some medical schools in Cameroon and also the absence of medical equipment in hospitals. They have also kicked against the emergence of several private medical institutions in the country, and they were speaking today in the capital city, Yaoundé, in an elective General Assembly. We shall be telling you more on that in a subsequent newscast. And that does it for this segment of the news. But up next is Talking Point. Good evening to you viewers. We thank you so much for joining us tonight on Talking Point. Of course, the hoisting or the absence of the head or the embattled president of the Central African Republic, Francois Bozizé, is still making headline news. And tonight we have a barrister at law, Barrister Philip Fosanzikum. Good evening and thanks indeed for joining us tonight.
Good evening.
Of course, we are going to be looking at the status of the President Francois Bozizé, who is currently in Cameroon. He was chased from power by the Seleka rebels. According to you, when somebody as a president flees the country, what is he at this point in time, especially as he is in Cameroon?
Well, thanks. I think what you first do as a scholar, a constitutional scholar, or an international law scholar, is you go into the constitution of the country, and what obtains from the constitution of Central African Republic is that nobody can be forced into exile. And when you look at that very closely with Article 19 of that constitution, which says that a president gets power as of the people, for the people, and from the people, I think as when you put being a constitutional scholar and an international law scholar together and putting nobody is allowed into, is supposed to be forced into exile, and how a president comes to be in Central Africa, I think the legal consequence of that is that Mr. Bozizé is still head of state.
He's still head of state. And how do we look at him in Cameroon? Is he a political figure or a refugee?
He's a head of state.
he remains a head of state.
He remains a head of state because it was premature to throw him out in this way. You have heard how the South African president has condemned those rebels, have called them bandits. So I think they have done what is called an own goal, constitutional own goal, by killing South Africans and therefore promoting their own illegality.
When you say he's a head of state, do you mean that he is the head of state according to the fact that he had been a president, or can he still rule as the president of the Central African Republic?
That is where you have legal gymnastics, or if you mind, linguistic gymnastics is going to come in. He is president of the Central African Republic, but he cannot maybe do what a president can do. He cannot declare war, he cannot pay civil servants, he cannot take decisions as he used to take, but constitutionally he's still the head of state of Central Africa, and I'm sure this country knows that, and they're going to treat him as such.
For how long would that go?
What happens, you see, you have an international law, they talk about Committee of States, and that is why in the case of the Malian example, the West African states condemned what happened in Mali, and so the people who took power by a military coup had to relinquish power, and it was decided that in order not to create a vacuum, somebody had to take over just to wait whilst elections had to be called to establish a constitutional government. In the sense of Central Africa, I think that will also happen, because we've had condemnations. I think I've heard that president he's on transit, because you know in international politics people have to go where the countries are friendly. I think Cameroon is friendly enough, but he has that choice. And do not forget that there's what we call the Committee of States, where people are treated, or heads of states are treated in a certain way. And I think until that happens in Central Africa, where that vacuum is filled, he still remains the constitutional leader of Central Africa.
So he is supposed to be treated in a different way here in Cameroon, but the presidency of the Republic said that he's on transit in Cameroon and that he's not going to be for long. What does that mean?
Well, that is political language. They cannot, you see, what happens is that constitutionally he's the president of the Republic, and so the country, I think, will have to walk a tightrope. They have to be careful. They have to use diplomatic language. They cannot just say he's still president. And I think that is appropriate language, so that we have to do what we call a hide and seek in international law, and then we see how the situation evolves in Central African Republic, and people are talking, I'm sure, as it is people do in those situations, and the country is going to help him if he wants to have a safe passage. That is what is happening. I am sure this country has not said otherwise. He is still the head of state of Central Africa.
For how long is he expected to be in Cameroon?
The South Africa has said those guys who have taken power in Central Africa are bandits. They've killed South Africans. That is very, very serious under international law. We're going to see how it evolves. Are they going to ask the guy who took power in Central Africa to step down so that another constitutional government...
He has declared the holding of the presidential elections in 3 years.
We'll see how it goes, but I think that he will have to work very hard so that he's accepted internationally, because South Africa has said they are a band of bandits and they are not recognized. Let's see how things evolve.
They don't recognize. What do they mean by what does it mean by they are not recognized?
Well, let me put it this way. Bozezi also came to power through a military coup.
Yes.
2003, but in 2005 he was constitutionally elected, and that is what he's using now to remain head of state. Do not forget, the Constitution of Central Africa says that you have to be of the people, for the people, from the people. And Bozezi just did that. He had that mandate in 2005. He's and so he's still the president as far as constitutional law of that country, and the constitution, that's the main document, is concerned.
And of course the international community should recognize the Seleka rebel groups if they happen to be voted into power, of course.
Well, what happens is that you have what governments do best. They look at the greater evil. If they want to say you are not president, and then you don't have medical supplies, you don't have food, you don't have all those things that make a country to run, what happens? So sometimes the international community is going to weigh things in such a way that the people do not suffer. And then they have warned those rebels to be very careful. And I think that is why they are taking steps to reconcile very quickly, to see that the international community can accept them and they start functioning as a government and as a country, whilst they wait now to fill the shoes President Bozizé has left, if at all.
And what becomes of Central Africans? What becomes of it while we wait for maybe the new government to come into place, and what becomes of them? What
Well,
happens?
I think unfortunately it's not a very rich country. They will be fine, but you know, when there's a change of power, the way it's been done, there are the consequences. People pay a high price. But I think the rebels are conscious they've killed almost 20% South Africans. They're going to pay a price. I don't think the president of South Africa was joking when he called them bandits. That was very, very harsh language indeed. And I think they have decided to put the government in place, maintain the prime minister. In a few days, I think we're going to see a situation back to normal.
All this, the bone of contention is the Brazzaville Accord that is said not to be respected, or failure to respect the Libreville Accord, rather. So what is actually this Libreville Accord, if we could find out from you?
Well, it was just to, what the rebels are saying is that Bozizé didn't respect this accord. They didn't do it. But Bozizé says, no, I was doing my best. And I think there were concessions. Did he make a mistake? Should the president have gone out to massacre, to fight? I think in the circumstances, he may have, he did his best, because you had governments that went in to negotiate so that there is peace and things should evolve in a progressive manner. But the rebels decided otherwise.
And also, the part of the Accord, the Libreville Accord, stated that the president, the ruling president, was supposed to step down only by 2016, and now we are still in 2013. Is that not also the violation of the said accord?
Well, it just goes to to support that notion, where even in the Constitution of Central African Republic, it has to be power of the people, by the people, for the people. And so, if the president won elections again constitutionally, then I think he would be entitled to remain in power until that time. But was that a regional coup d'etat? We have to look into that. But having said all of that, I think those accords, if those rebels signed it, they would have respected those accords. If they have not done it, then they have a case to answer with the international community. Do not be surprised that tomorrow they are part of those prisoners in the Hague.
The Seleka rebels will be part of the prison.
It's a very serious. You see, in Africa, we keep thinking things are not happening. We keep thinking we can abuse, but you see the television and the networks like you are there to say, hey, stop. If you do not stop, you are likely to find yourself in hot waters in the international community court at The Hague.
And international leaders and also organizations have reacted to that. We see La Francophonie decrying it, and many other countries like Chad, South Africa, like you said, also criticizing the actions of the Seleka rebels.
Yes, yes, because they've killed people. It's very, very serious under international law. Having killed those South Africans, they're going to pay a price. South Africa is not going to let it happen. And I think that they have started on the wrong foot. Let's hope that they will have gravitas to be able to make things happen in a certain way, but I don't think they have stand a chance.
Thanks indeed, Barrister Philip Fosang Dikung. I hope I pronounced your name correctly.
Thank you very much.
Of course, Barrister at Law of the Lincoln Inns London University, Lincoln Inns London, in London, UK, right?
Yes, I'm a member of the Honourable Society of Lincoln, a barrister in England and Wales, and a graduate of the London School of Economics.
Thanks indeed for joining us tonight on Talking Point. And to you viewers, we have come to the end of this edition of the Primetime Newscast on Equinox Television. We thank you so much for watching. Meantime, have a wonderful start in the company of our programs. Good evening.